After signing his highest-ranked recruit to date, Dennis Gates may just be ready to top himself here in a couple weeks.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And you know what? Today I am busier than a one-armed paper hanger, but I'm going to get in a quick episode of Locked On Mizzou for you today. Sorry for the shorter episode here, but you know what? Let's just get right into it because there's some exciting news happening here potentially behind the scenes with Missouri basketball in particular. So let me just lay out some facts here for you really quickly. On June 2nd, Tim Fuller was hired once again by Missouri, but in a different role, this time to be the general manager of Missouri basketball. I don't think a lot of people saw that coming, but after thinking about it for a while, I thought, you know what? This guy has all the right connections. This could be a very, very interesting move. Again, that was just over a month ago that Missouri hired Tim Fuller to be its basketball GM. Well, about 6 days ago, Scotty Adkinson, a top 30 player in the 2027 class, well, the start to that 2027 class for Missouri, arguably Dennis Gates' best high school recruit yet, depending on what rankings you look at, I suppose, but I believe he's even higher ranked than Honor Boateng was last season. A really promising player there. And now there's this, according to Joe Tipton of On3.com, quote, "The Tigers have discreetly entered the mix and appear to be the team to beat for Jason Crowe Jr. Now, Crowe Jr. is really a one-and-done type of talent, so he's even higher ranked. We're talking top 10, top 15 nationally, according to just about everybody. That's the consensus here, is Jason Crowe Jr. So what's interesting about that, again, Missouri enters the mix fairly late in the process here. I think the general thought was that, at least among Kentucky fans that I could see, is that the Wildcats and Mark Pope were the favorite for Jason Crowe's services. Well, ultimately, it sounds like we're going to find out on July 18th. Now, this is a player for the 2026 class, so unlike Scotty Adkinson, well, Crowe would be here fairly soon. And again, I do think there is a very good chance with his profile he could be just a one-and-done type of player, just 1 year at Missouri. But for his type of talent, I'll take that 1 year, no question about that. So that very much could be the Tim Fuller effect in effect here, because I don't know what else to explain what is Missouri's late charge and a late, not only charge, but a late lead here possibly, if we're to believe Joe Tipton and On3's reporting here. Now, well, Dennis Gates and the basketball program appear to right now be being more aggressive on the high school side of things in terms of recruiting. It sure seems like Eli Drinkwitz and the football program are throttling it down a little bit on the high school side of things. As I've said in a few different spots here, including on the SEC squad, I'm really looking at the next portal transfer class for Missouri. If there's a significant drop off between the last 2 or 3 portal classes for Missouri and the 2026 class, well, to me, that is a real sign of concern for Missouri fans. But until then, I'm choosing to think this is more of a different allocation of resources for Missouri. And I think especially those blue chip type of basketball recruits can very much often be worth the price of admission. And I will say this, you're seeing a lot of guys like the recently committed Tony Forney from Marietta, Georgia, safety, 5'11", 180 pounds. Well, he's like just about everybody in the consensus rankings is a 3-star player, is Tony Forney. Well, in the massive aggregate, as many people have pointed out, over the years and you look at every program in the country, you look at it over a decade or two, there's no doubt that, yes, more 4-star players are going to go to the NFL than 3-star players, for example. But just like, you flip a coin 1,000 times, the more you do it, for example, the closer you are more than likely to get to a 50-50 result. But in a small result, if you're only going to flip it 15 times, kooky things can happen. And my point here is that not only is that the case, but the difference between a 3-star and a 4-star player is simply just personal opinion for the most part. We know Gary Pinkel was able to exploit a lot of, I think, traits that scouts often weren't looking for. The recruiting services, at least, weren't looking for in players that fit his defensive systems, his offensive systems. And that's the thing. Not all systems are the same, so not all players are going to fit into the same team in the same way. I just think teams are making a huge mistake if they aren't figuring out how to be a little bit different offensively and defensively. By the way, a lot of homogenous football is being played right now, just X's and O's wise. And that's always kind of been the case in pro football. But in college, I think there was a lot more variety, not so much in the last, 5 to 10 years or so, where just about every team is running some version, at least offensively, of a shotgun spread offense that throws a lot of lateral passes, runs a lot of run-pass options, a lot of inside zone, a lot of outside zone in the running game. If this sounds familiar, it's because it should. You've seen a lot of that kind of offense the last few years. Now, defensively, there's a little bit more of a change-up, and yet still, I think you see, obviously, the nickel package. Having 3 linebackers on the field at the same time in major college football is now a bit of a thing of the past. So that homogenization is causing recruiting to be a little bit more homogenized as well. And I think the teams that can be just a little bit different, that can find traits that specifically fit the type of football that they're trying to play, even if it isn't a massive difference, like, okay, spread versus, hey, we're going to run the flex bone triple options style of offense. It doesn't have to be that dramatically different. It can be as different as, okay, I'm going to play, 1 gap versus 2 gap. I'm going to play, more cover 3 and cover 1 style defense versus 2 safety, cover 2, cover 4, that type of thing. I think the more different you can be, especially if you're a program like Missouri, I think the better you're going to do. And as all of you everydayers are well aware at this point, I think Missouri's so-called easy schedule is a little bit overblown. But when it comes to the rest of the SEC, in comparison, I got to say Missouri's road schedule in the conference truly couldn't be easier, I don't think, especially, again, compared to the rest of the conference. I want to talk about those ramifications in just a little bit. But have you ever decided at the last minute, maybe you're like me, you want to just take a road trip to Busch Stadium or Kauffman Stadium, take in a little bit of baseball? Well, Gametime is the best place to find those last-minute tickets because they make buying tickets so fast and simple. Incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. We're talking Gametime has last-minute tickets and zone deals for big savings, like 10% off exclusive zone deals for the FIFA Club World Cup matchups, by the way. Again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKED ONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So if you're an everydayer, you know I think this is going to be an exciting and unpredictable season of SEC football. And I was talking with my colleague Jimmy Stein over at Locked On Bama, and he seems to agree with me. In fact, he's having a tough time going game by game through everyone's schedule. He's having a real tough time finding 9-10 games for even the top teams in this conference. He's saying, heck, even if you can win a couple games on the road this season, well, if so, welcome to Atlanta. Now, that might be a bit of hyperbole, but I would say if you can win 3 games on the road, well, welcome to Atlanta very much is in play, because if you look at the standings last season, well, there were only 3 teams that had 3 or more wins on the road: Texas, South Carolina, and Ole Miss. Would you believe it that, yes, Ole Miss and South Carolina didn't make the SEC title game? Of course, Texas did, being 4-0 on the road. But you may forget Georgia, as good as they were last season, just 2-2 on the road in the Southeastern Conference. So obviously, a lot of that has to do with the quality of competition. And if you look at Missouri's 4 SEC road games this season, of course, the only 4 road games Missouri plays this season, well, the Tigers have a real opportunity here to make some hay. You look at Oklahoma, Auburn, and those are 2 of the 4 worst teams in the conference last season. I think most people expect Oklahoma to be improved this season. Who knows with Auburn? There's a wide variety of opinions there. I tend to be a little bit more negative with Auburn, but we shall see. I think the point here is that along with Vanderbilt being on the road and, of course, the Arkansas Razorbacks being on the road this season as well, that is as weak of a road schedule as you could possibly have. Now, on the other side of it, yeah, Missouri has some difficult home games with Alabama, Texas A&M, South Carolina, even out of conference. Obviously, Kansas is not a layup whatsoever either, but we're talking SEC here, of course. So just those road games are so important. You look even at last season, SEC home teams were 83-31, and nearly half of those losses, by the way, by those teams at home, were by some of the worst teams in the league. 3 of those 4, like I said, Auburn, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. So talking to Jimmy, he wouldn't be surprised if those 83 wins at home, much closer to 90 this season. This is a man who's watched SEC football for decades, has seen the great times with Nick Saban and the not-so-great times with other Alabama coaches as well. So he's thinking, hey, even a couple wins on the road could have you in contention for Atlanta. I think if you're Missouri, try to get 3 out of 4, and I think you're looking at a real successful season for the Tigers at the very least. And again, apologies for the late show here today, and really especially the fun-sized edition here of Locked On Mizzou. But I'll tell you this, next week is SEC Media Days. And what does that mean? That means we're back to 5 days a week here on Locked On Mizzou starting next week. So I'm going to try to get you some more content here this week while I'm running around all over the place. But it's going to be, it's going to be here, there, and yon. You'll just have to stay subscribed to my show on YouTube. Hey, hit your notifications bell if you want to know exactly when the next episode of Locked On Mizzou posts. So until next time, I am John Miller. This has been Locked On Mizzou.